Thank you. A warm welcome to those attending and viewing our watch live on our Council Youth channel, Hillingdon, London. Details of business to be considered today are shown on the agenda, copies of which are available in the room and also accessible online and underneath the live broadcast. For those present in the room and attending to speak, please note that you will be filmed, and any statement that you will make will be recorded and made public. For those solely observing in the room today, that's you guys at the back there, you may wish to know that the camera is angled away from you from the public gallery where you are sitting. At the end of public part of this meeting, there will be a committee move to discuss any confidential matters that are on the live broadcast and will be cut, but we haven't got any of those today, so we're lucky there. A reminder to anybody speaking today that your voice will only be heard and audible when the microphone is switched on. We are not expecting a fire drill, so if the alarm goes off, please follow the officers out of the room and to the designated areas. If you have mobiles or tablets in the room, please make sure they're switched off or on silent. You may note that councillors are able to use theirs, and so they can view their stuff on the tablets, but no one here has got one, so no, so we're okay there. There is resident feedback forms at the back, so if you're minded to, you can please complete one of the yellow resident forms at the back. The information for these forms is intended to help us improve the way we run our meetings. Forms can be completed and left in this room or collected after the meeting or completed and returned by post to the address on the form. If you are watching on YouTube, you can also complete the form online. There is a link below the live broadcast. First, we'll have any declarations of interest, and we have no part 2 items, so we'll leave that as well. So we'll go straight to the agenda. Can I have apologies for absence, please?
All members are present, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Declarations of interest in the meeting coming before us? No? Okay, do we agree the minutes from the previous meeting? Yep. Agreed, thank you. Matters that are to be notified in advance or urgent?
None, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll also introduce the committee. First, I'll start with councillors. To my left, which is appropriate, is Councillor Morse and Councillor Dinham. Welcome. And to my right, I'll start off with Councillor Wyldewoode, Councillor Brightman, Councillor Kaufman, Councillor Tupwell, who's my vice chairman, and if I do anything or fall off my chair, he'll step in. And then we go to our officer corps. I'll start off with Alan Tilley, who is here on transportation. Fiona, welcome. She's a new head team leader. Welcome to us. Katie, obviously another planning lead team leader. Ros Johnson here, who is my planning service manager to my right. Also, at the far left there, I have Kerry Monroe, who is our planning lawyer, and the person that keeps me in check and makes sure that I'm doing everything correctly is Neil Fraser, who's from Democratic Services. So, on all that, I think I've covered all those bases. We'll go straight to the agenda. I'll just give you an example on the petitioners. You have 5 minutes. You have a red light, red, amber and green. You have 3, when it gets to amber, you have 1 minute left. I don't mean to be offending anybody, but I will stop you when it goes red, regardless of whatever the situation is. And for the councillor in the back, you only have 3 minutes. And because you know how to speak, because you chair us very well. So we get on with it then. So who's taking us out for the first item, which is 59?
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much.
So the first item on tonight's agenda is 59 Elm Avenue in Eastcote. So the application is to demolish the existing bungalow on site and construct a 2-storey building with roof space accommodation. So I'll just show you the site here. That's an aerial image of it. So the building would accommodate 6 homes, so there'd be 2 on each level. There'd also be some changes to the crossovers on site, but I will show you this on the proposed plan as we go through this presentation. Planning officers are recommending that this application is approved for reasons discussed in the committee report, and I'll also outline. So this is the site here. So you can see it's you've got Elm Avenue at the top there, and you've got Oak Grove here, which is a overbridge across. You've got London Underground track on the rear there, so it's a rail over bridge. So if we go through here, so here you can see this is the bungalow that's being demolished. And this is it, just another, that's the bungalow here. The site is in a critical drainage area and it's supported by a flood risk assessment and a condition for a sustainable urban drainage strategy. There are no other planning designations applicable to the site. So if we just have a look at, well, it's another image of Oak Grove there. So if we look at the existing and proposed block plan, you can see the building here compared to the existing bungalow. These are the elevations, so you've got the front elevation at the top, the rear and each side, and the site plan here. So this is where you can see where the proposed crossovers are. So the existing one here that's closest to Oak Grove, that will be extinguished and the footway reinstated. You've got a new one here and then an enlargement here, and then parking for 4 cars. So I think in terms of looking at this application, I think the history is very important. So there have been 4 previous applications on site. The earliest 2 were for a pair of detached dwellings. So the 2 most recent and applicable ones were earlier variations of the scheme that we have in front of us. So the most recent ones were in 2020 and 21. So members may be familiar with the site from then. So both these applications were refused and minded to refuse respectively. And both of them have since been appealed. So the planning inspector has issued a decision for the 2020 application, while the appeal for the 2021 application is still pending. So in terms of the reasons that the planning committee had for refusing it previously, was that there were essentially three reasons that we refused the application on. So it was harm to the character and visual amenities of the area due to the scale, siting and design of the development, the loss of a family-sized dwelling without any re-provision, which would result in poor housing mix, and also harm to highway safety due to the proposed parking and crossovers across the Elm Avenue frontage and the proximity to Grove Avenue. So in terms of the inspector's decision, as it's detailed in the committee report, the planning inspector did not agree that the proposal would have an adverse impact on the character of the area, and also didn't agree that there would be a risk to highway safety. So the only reason that the inspector agreed with the LPA was that the housing mix was inappropriate, as it didn't provide any 3 or 4 bedroom homes. So I've just got a couple of slides here just comparing the differences. So the one that was appealed is this one to the left, and the one that we're currently considering is the one to the right here. So bearing in mind that the planning inspector didn't consider that there would be harm to the character of the area, they are very similar designs. The only real difference is if you look at the rear elevation, the one that we're considering today has a little bit of an extension on the back, and they also, I think they don't have bay windows around here, but they're still retaining the mock Tudor design, mock Tudor reference that the planning inspector considered was appropriate for the area. So if we go to the proposed layouts here, again you can see that they're almost identical with respect to the car parking layout, as the planning inspector made a decision that there wouldn't be harm to highway safety, so it's the same layout. The only difference with respect to the housing mix, that was like the one reason that they sought to overcome. So you can see here, this is where the extension comes into the rear here. So they're providing a 3-bedroom family home to the rear here. So in terms of the housing mix, previously it was 2 1-beds and 4 2-beds. So now it's 2 1-beds, 3 2-beds and 1 3-bed. These are just some, sorry, it's probably best to stay on there. So taking into account the appeal decision of the very similar application, it is considered unjustifiable to refuse this application on harm to the character of the area or harm to highway safety. So in respect to the housing mix, the inclusion of a 3-bedroom unit is considered acceptable. In all other respects, the proposal will provide good quality accommodation for prospective residents and would not cause harm to neighbouring residential amenity. So it's therefore recommended that planning permission be granted subject to the conditions detailed in the committee report. And I'd just like to draw members' attention to the addendum report. So 3 further representations were received. A lot of them principally the matters that were raised were already addressed in the committee report, but they're detailed on the addendum. And also there is an amendment to Condition 20. So Condition 20 has the dimensions of the crossovers. So it's just been modified slightly to provide for the two. So it's still in accordance with our crossover policies, but the dimensions are slightly off. So it's now seeking to amend it to constructed to measure 5.4 metres with tapers at the edge of the carriageway and 5 metres back from the junction. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. We'll go straight to the petitioner, which is Robert Pearmain. Is that correct? Pronounced that right, I hope? Forgive me if I haven't. Yeah. I think we saw you last time anyway, didn't we?
Button turning right.
Whenever you start, we will time you.
Okay. I'd like to thank the planning officer for a comprehensive report on this latest application for 59 Elm Avenue. As has been mentioned, this is the third application concerning a block of 6 flats, the previous 2 having been recommended for refusal by the planning officer and unanimously endorsed at previous planning committee meetings. Overall, we feel that this application should have been treated as a standalone application, given the different emphases that have been applied. However, the planning officer's report chooses to draw heavily on the history, with many references made to the planning inspectorate's appeal decision in November 2021, which has been mentioned. This is in terms of what the inspector said regarding the council's 3 putative reasons, 2 of which he disagreed with, 1 of which he endorsed. More worryingly, there are many places in the planning officer's report where she tries to infer support from the inspector in areas where he did not comment in that appeal decision. That is completely out of order, given that those areas were not part of the 3 putative reasons, and therefore obviously he wouldn't comment. We have well over 40 residents who have signed the e-petition against this application and still have major issues and concerns around character and appearance, highway safety, density and the internal layout and design. Now, under the character and appearance, residents do not agree with the inspector dismissing this reason. There is no precedent for a development of this nature within the residential streets of Eastcote in terms of size, bulk, composition and density, especially one of having whole dwelling units at the 2nd floor / roof space level. Indeed, the current application has increased room heights to meet London plan requirements, resulting in the flat crown roof being at a higher level than the earlier plan referred to. The sectional plan on page 138 in your document pack suggests that the overall height is 9.75 metres, not 9.3 metres as in the planning officer's report, and is thus nearly 1 metre higher than the neighbouring properties. On highway safety, the residents have felt all along that their concerns have not been properly understood and considered either by the planning officer or the inspector. The major concern is with the 4 parking spaces of minimal size which are at right angles to Elm Avenue, which would require residents to manoeuvre forwards into the parking spaces and reverse back out, and given the topology, it means that those manoeuvres would be right out into the centre of Elm Avenue, which is a busy road and immediately adjacent to the junction with Lime Grove and Lime Grove and Oak Grove. And visibility when reversing out would be compromised by the neighbouring cars. There's comments about the past year's accidents figures, which we do not believe are comparable, given that the previous occupant of the property did not drive a vehicle. On the density side, the planning officer correctly notes the density of development is over twice that of the London plan, but she incorrectly then goes on to assert again that as the inspector did not raise concerns, it's all right, and we should not be raising concerns now. Residents have consistently expressed concerns about this excessive density. The new plans to meet the disabled accessibility requirements under Part M of the building regulations in the ground floor flats, and the recent amended plans have seen various rearrangements of walls to include 1500mm wheelchair turning circles. resulting in the plan that's in page 139 of your documents, which was displayed earlier. And given that the whole development barely meets the nationally designed space standards, it appears to fail in this respect of meeting Part M, despite removing a second toilet in flat 2. We would stress that paragraph 9 of the standards specifically state this minimum is not adequate for wheelchair housing. There are numerous other ways in which the flats suffer from poor quality design. Living areas on the colder north side not being energy efficient, ground floor flats not having direct access to their own amenity areas, third floor bedroom of flat 2 of obscure glazing overlooking the side passageway, second floor flats with dormer windows at the side, meaning that there's only 2 windows in the whole property that are clear glazed and openable. Residents would accept having some increased building density on the plot, but it should be in keeping with the surroundings, i.e. housing of good proportions internally and externally where families could grow up in an established neighbourhood. We'd remind committee members that the successful 2019 appeal decision provides such a development in granting the 2 detached houses.
Thank you very much. Oh, that's very good. Bang on. Maybe you should do the lottery tonight. And any questions from the committee to the petition? No, nothing. You are dismissed. Oh, sorry, you do that. Councillor Morse, beg your pardon.
I'm aware that if you go from this location down to the High Street in East, about 50% of the cars on that road back out onto what is, to me, a very highly used road. But so what is different about that aspect to this?
There's 2 things. One is on a lot of forecourts there is far more space because you've got sort of it's equivalent size with, say, 1 or 2 cars, so you can reverse out or manoeuvre in at an angle rather than being completely orthogonal to the roadway. And the other aspect, which we know well from where we live near the end of Hawthorne Avenue, is one of the visibility, not so much looking up and down Elm Avenue, but the fact that you have no visibility to cars coming out of Lime Grove and Oak Grove, and you can be manoeuvring out into a completely clear road, and before you finish your manoeuvre, there is somebody immediately behind you honking their horn. Okay. And that's happened numerous times to us, yeah? And we're not as close to that very busy and often congested junction.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. You may take your seat back. Thank you. Okay, we have the applicant agent. We have a written submission which Neil will kindly read out. Can I put the time on?
So this is a statement submitted by the agent on behalf of the applicant. Dear members, firstly, please accept my apology, but due to COVID restrictions, I'm not able to attend in person today. With respect to the proposed application, members will have reflected on the 5th of November 2021 appeal decision for a similar proposal for 6 dwellings. Whilst the appeal was dismissed for a lack of a 3-bedroom dwelling, the appeal inspector was clear in the decision that all other matters were found to be acceptable. The appeal decision is a significant material consideration that needs to be weighed in the overall determination of this application. This application includes almost all of the same dwelling numbers, siting, design, scale, amenity, living spaces, external garden and parking spaces of the appeal scheme. The only changes relate to a modification of the ground floor footprint with a 1.2 metre rear depth addition and inclusion of a 3-bedroom dwelling to address the appeal inspector's remaining concern with respect to appeal decision 3273062. It is put forward the modest ground floor rear addition will not be of a scale that would result in this scheme materially different to the one determined by the appeal inspector in terms of scale, siting, character or harm to adjoining properties. The applicant considers the present application has addressed the appeal decision shortfall and requests members to grant approval subject to conditions.
Thank you very much, Neil. Well done. That was turn it off. Yeah. Well, I'll say, don't worry, Jan. Okay. What a gentleman. There you go. Your presence is required now, Councillor.
Just because the feedback.
He would. He's such a gentleman, that one.
Thank you very much. The proposed development at 59 Elm Avenue has a very contentious history. Residents have consistently written and petitioned against this development, and up until now the recommendation has always been a refusal. Once again, I'm here this evening on behalf of the Cavendish Ward councillors to strongly support the local residents to refuse this application. The proposed development, due to its siting scale and bulk, still fails to harmonise with the established local context. It is detrimental to the character, appearance and visual amenities of the street scene and the wider area. In the summary of the officer's report, paragraph 3 states, "It is considered that this current proposal would not have such a harmful impact." The use of the determiner such indicates that there is acknowledgement given to the impact that this current proposal would have. Therefore, it is disappointing to see that although there is an awareness that this development is going to have a negative impact on the character and the appearance of the area, the officers are still minded to approve it. This idea is further reinforced by the 21 conditions put on this planning proposal. 21 conditions? The fact that this proposal is subject to 21 conditions suggests that there is an underlying acknowledgement that this development will have a negative impact. Yet, disappointingly, the officers are still minded to approve it. The junction of Elm Avenue, Oak Grove and Lime Grove can be hazardous, often leaving drivers and pedestrians vulnerable to the volume of traffic and vehicles congested in this small area. Looking around the planning committee this evening, I can see some members here who are only too familiar with this location and have witnessed firsthand what I describe. Though highways have said that there is no issue with traffic management or no harm to highway safety, I beg to disagree. The huge concern I have is around construction management. Construction work on a development of this size and bulk in this location will only intensify the issues mentioned at this busy junction and will continue to put our residents at risk. Surely we need to think how we're going to safeguard our residents, not put them in harm's way. Overall, I strongly believe that this application should be refused. Thank you.
Well in time. That's really good. Thank you very much. I don't know if you can't go yet. No, you have to wait. Good. Does anybody have any questions for our councillor? No. You may go now. Thank you very much. Right, I'm going to, before we go open to the floor, I'm just going to get officers to, there's some things that were said about density, disabled, MP4, and height of the roof, and also condition 20, the 21 conditions as well. So
Yes.
and the construction plan as well. Please don't forget that either. Right. So who's going to take me away with that? Casey, thank you.
Okay, so in respect to the height of the roof, so we did receive revised plans during the process where we got sections showing the floor-to-ceiling head heights of 2.5 metres, and so, but then we, in short, the section plan does match what the elevations are in terms of height. I think there might be a slight error in the report where it might say 9.3, it is 9.6 metres, but that is what's shown on the plans, and there is a street scene elevation as well in the planning document. So irrespective of whether there is a 30 centimetre difference reported in the report, what is shown on the plans does show the development within the context and how it relates to the neighbouring properties. So in that respect, we are happy with that. In terms of density, it is recognised in the report that the density is slightly higher, or is higher than what's recommended in the Hillingdon local plan. I guess density is just one indicator when you're looking at an application, so it may indicate an overdevelopment of site, but you also need to consider how it fits in with the character of the area, and also whether it provides good quality accommodation, and the assessment that we have done indicates that it does, in line with the, well, also taking into account the appeal decision as well that we have. I think in terms of, I think a comment was raised with respect to it's possibly inferred, it's inferred in the report some parts where the planning inspector was quiet on and that we drew support from. I guess it was probably a little bit, it's not misleading, but in terms of what the planning inspector does consider is the reasons for refusal, and as planning officers and the planning committee that the cases were heard at, they were the reasons that we determined that the application should be refused, and so irrespective of whether we were inferring anything, they were the reasons that had to be considered, and that's the appeal decision that we have before us to consider today. What else? M3. Okay. In terms of that one, so the revised plans have been reviewed by our accessibility officer, and the accessibility officer is happy with them and of the opinion that it can meet the terms of M3. I think it's M3 point. M432A. So there is flexibility within the London plan to alter it slightly, and we do know there are some shortfalls on it in terms of being fully accessible, like we aren't having a lift. We have accessibility wasn't an issue raised before either. So in terms of M432A, the requirements are that there's sufficient provision to be made to allow simple adaptation of the dwelling to meet the needs of occupants who use wheelchairs. So in that respect, in line with our internal officer, we are happy that they will be able to meet that requirement. The construction management plan. So there is a condition 4 that's recommended for a construction management plan. So oftentimes, people don't always know exactly how they're going to be constructing something until after they've got the permission, they've set out the contracts. So it's quite a reasonable and standard sort of condition that we do put on, that we get those details once they're ready to start constructing. So we will have a plan submitted to us that will cover vehicle routes going to and from site, noise, dust, dampening, things like that. So in terms of construction management, it will be managed, but also it is a temporary effect also. So it will just be for the duration of the construction. It won't be a long-term impact on neighbours. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. Yeah, I just wanted to stress, obviously it's been raised regarding the appeal decision. We can't ignore the appeal decision. It is a really important material consideration. We do need to look at what the inspector found, and we need to make a comparison between this scheme. In my opinion, the council would be deemed unreasonable if we were to depart from the inspector's view in terms of the character and appearance element. So in officer's view, this is a very similar scheme to the one that the inspector found acceptable. Obviously, members, you'll have to reach your own judgment on that. And then just while I'm speaking, I would just refer to the comment regarding the number of conditions. Personally, I don't think it's an unreasonable number of conditions. I think officers have just been very thorough, to be honest, because we realise this is a contentious scheme and we wanted to ensure we've covered everything.
Thank you, officers. That's fantastic. Okay, now I'll open it to the floor. Who's taking me? Steve, Mr. Tuckrow, Councillor Tuckrow. Stop calling you by your first names. I'll get told off for this. Been called worse. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't really know where to start with this scheme. I've sat here before and been part of the committee that's refused it. I don't like it. I don't like the scheme. I don't agree with the inspector's 2 points, which is around the impact on the street scene and the highways impact. Clearly, it's going to have an impact on the street scene. I know this part of the world exceptionally well, only living around the corner from it myself. And I know how precarious that Elm Avenue is, and particularly the cut-through, which is Oak Grove. People use it to sort of bypass Eastcote High Street. There is a good news story out of it, in as much as we have got now a family dwelling included in it, but that's the only positive I can draw from this application. I have to commend the Eastcote Residents Association. In the report, they have thrown the kitchen sink at this application, but I also have to congratulate officers as well who've addressed each of the points. There's a number of points in there, in an attempt to try and find a reason where we can refuse this application. But I also have to recognise that the inspector has made his decision, and we're snookered to a degree on that basis. My other concern would be that if we were to find a way to refuse this application this evening, that the 21 conditions upon appeal could be diluted in some respects, and we might lose control and end up with an even worse scheme than one that's already been presented in front of us. So those are the points I wanted to raise, and just sort of put out there that I do not like this scheme, but I have to recognise that it has been determined by a higher planning authority, and we're kind of got our hands tied a little bit. But I'll be eager to hear other members' views, which I'm sure will be similar, and hoping we can find something we can refuse this on. Thank you, Councillor Tuck. Well, I've just been advised, because you said that you lived around the corner, that you have to declare that as an interest. Can legal expand on that for me, please?
Yeah, I would highlight that there is an interest with it depends where you're residing exactly. I'm not sure where you live, Councillor Tuckwell. I'm not sure you want to declare your address either on camera, but it's a matter of your point of view to know the distance between this application address and where your location is. Otherwise, it would be perceived as a conflict of interest and a apparent bias.
Of course. I think it's the terminology around the corner. I actually live in a different ward, but a neighbouring ward.
That's fine.
We all got nervous then.
So yeah.
It's quite far in, but yes, that's fine. Absolutely.
That will teach you to use the correct terminology. There
Thank
you
you.
go. Right, around the corner. Okay, Councillor Kaufmann, have you indicated?
Thank you very much, Chairman. Firstly, I have to say that I live opposite Councillor Tuckwell, so...
You're not in the ward.
Without going into all the deliberations that Councillor Tuckwell has brought forward, I have to say, from my point of view, and I know the area well, that I don't like the scheme, but I don't think there's anything we can do as a committee to actually to go to let the applicant go to appeal. So I would actually go for going along with the officer's recommendations. The report's good, it's well written, and I don't have any problem, but I'd just like to say that I don't like the scheme.
You're proposing, yes? Okay. Councillor Morse and then Councillor Dennis. Yes, you are.
Did we actually put in an official objection to the previous inspector because it was an appalling decision? If somebody thinks that's compatible with the local area, basically it's a fundamental clash of issues. And the other feature that you've got in the report, he says, because it was on the corner plot, which makes it actually more prominent, he seems to think it's all right. That's contradiction. I'm sorry, I'm giving examples. Well, I mean, I would take the view that if the committee or whoever did this before, it should not ask, I don't think, should have put in an objection to that inspector's decision, because I think it's a bad decision, and therefore it leaves us in a strange position because we're always told we can't ignore these inspectors because they carry weight. What options do we have? I'm asking planning officers because I had a degree of empathy with the speakers and what they said. I have some concerns about the proximity to the junction. I raised the point about reversing out because down that road there's lots of people who actually reverse out, but we are right next to a junction. So obviously, could Alan Tilley explain why he has no concerns? Sorry, Alan, I do apologise. Can you give an explanation why you have no concerns about being so close to this junction? We've got cars reversing out. I mean,
what I'm going to do, Councillor Morse, first I'm going to get legal to sort of explain that bit, and then as Alan, in his capacity as the Transport and Planning Development Team Manager, he will discuss what the Council's view is on the thing. So, off we go, Kerry.
Well, we've heard from the planning team leader that it has gone to appeal, and the inspector did did overturn the council's decision to refuse the application. The planning inspector's decision is a fundamental material parent decision, so that it's basically a parent has spoken and has put the decision down to the local planning authority. What I'm hearing today is that this application is similar to what was already granted at appeal, and any turn around from what the inspector says has to have good justification, because the ramifications for the local planning authority is cost implications. Whilst I appreciate that the local planning authority pursues what is right, and it's thoroughly investigated here and debated, that's just the ultimatum that the local planning authority would have cost implications if a new inspector decides that it was wrong to depart from its fellow inspector's decision. So fundamentally, what's necessary is for any departure from what is recommended today must have sufficient justification. That's what I would just highlight. Yes, I think members are best placed to exercise their judgment to decide what is not, bearing in mind the looking at the planning material considerations. Members are fitting. Each of you are fitting to decide what is right in your planning judgment today.
Thank you, Kerry. I'm going to, before I go to you, Alan, I'll just it's even more difficult than that, because our appeal was upheld, but we lost it on, out of the 3, we lost it on 2. So it's even more complicated. So that's where we are there. Now I'm going to go over to Alan, and can you explain the part of the driving out of the thing? Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'll just give some context to the highway as a whole. It's got a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit, street lighting, and there's central hatchings to narrow the carriageways, which in turn calms the speed of traffic. In the last, since 2016, there's been 4 road traffic accidents, 3 involving slight injuries, cuts and bruises. 1 resulted in a serious injury, which is a visit to the hospital. Now, to this development, with the new vehicle crossovers, we've asked for the condition to be changed, as Katie read out earlier, and that's to make sure that the vehicle crossovers are in absolute 100% conformity with the council guidelines, which the main point being that they are required to be set 5 metres back from the junction with Elm Avenue. And the width of the crossovers we've asked to be widened from 4.8 metres to 5.4 metres. And then we've also added the wording, notwithstanding the plans submitted, the vehicle crossovers must be in conformity with council guidelines. Okay. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Alan.
One more point.
That's okay.
Yeah. Now, this scheme will have some road safety advantages. As you can see, the existing situation, there's a vehicle crossover right on the junction of Elm Avenue and Oak Grove. That vehicle crossover, as you can see, it's got flat curbs. We've had representations before about a problem of vehicles overrunning that footway. In response, the curbs were built up, and that was done, I estimate, in the last 18 months. Now, a benefit of this scheme will be that the vehicle crossover there will be filled in, and there'll be full height curbstones along that curb line that Katie's indicating, thereby protecting pedestrians. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Alan. Sorry to you've raised some points, and it just makes my head go ping, ping, ping. So, I just was asking officers if we can make sure that that crossover is actually infilled before the development starts, because you can imagine lorries backing into there and causing no harm of disruption to our carriageways. Does that cover everything, Councillor Morse, that you think?
Oh.
I mean, the thing
I'll see if anybody else has got anything to add.
That's fine.
I've indicated my possibility.
I would just add that, remember, we always have the risk is that the committee could find reasons for refusal, but I'll be very surprised if you can find them. And myself.
And if the committee members decide that there's new grounds, which is not symmetrical to what was presented, like the free grounds, like you've mentioned, Councillor Morse, you're concerned about the prominency on the curb. That's a new ground. Yeah. So, yes, basically it's just being clear on the justification on the ground and bringing forth if there's new ground and making clear the reasoning as well.
Yes, but the danger...
Yes,
which
there
I
is,
would-
there is the danger of the inspector team or the inspector considering that the application is duplicitous, the appeal is duplicitous, and that it shouldn't have come back again to appeal on similar complaints, and the inspector deciding that the local planning authority is acting unreasonable and making a cost award against the local planning authority.
And the other thing is that we will lose all the conditions that we are trying to put in here. So you could end up being a lot worse in the scheme. Councillor Dinham, you had a question. Or maybe it's been answered. Maybe it's not.
I had a comment. It is about road safety and the parking, but it's more or less been answered. I do think it is unsafe, and we would be... I don't know, I don't feel comfortable voting for this application when I know something is incorrect and it's going to be possibly dangerous to not only other road users but to the users of those homes. Reversing out onto that busy road is not something I'm comfortable with voting for.
Yes. Do you... something? No?
I was just going to say just with the higher curbs that you see here, we can incorporate it within the condition that when they are doing when they are infilling this, that they can have the higher curbs than normal, just to protect that.
Okay. I think just a point of clarity, because I think we've been in this situation with other applications where it's come back from appeal. I'd just like to hear from officers and possibly legal is that, are we in a position now where if we find something we can bolt it on? My understanding is that we can't just suddenly add conditions to almost exactly the same scheme, and we have to work with the refusals that we've got. So I'll be interested to hear about that. The other thing is just the symmetry of that junction. I mean, you've got two bungalows either side of that symmetry, and again, I just have to completely disagree with the inspector's assertions here. But again, I can see if this goes to a further appeal, we could end up with costs, and we could end up with a scheme which is a lot worse than we've got with less conditions. So we would lose control over it. So, yeah. Thank you, Councillor Dunn. And I'm going to wrap it up after this.
Yeah, just make a point on the aspect of public safety. So, I've had a case in Pinkwell where we have a drop curb exactly like that, and the bus runs over it. And every time it's a possible threat to someone being injured. However, I've been told, on balance, right, in planning law, on balance, or planning guidelines, on balance, it's safe. Now, here, we are about to vote for something that we know is unsafe, and again, we're being told it is safe. So I don't know where we stand on it. Hence, I'm uncomfortable with agreeing with the application.
Okay, yeah. Helen.
Yes, for the avoidance of doubt, the vehicle crossover on the corner will be closed. The footway will be reinstated, and I've just been speaking with colleagues on the idea that we require in the condition that higher curbstones are built around that junction, so that there'll be no chance for vehicles of any size to overrun the footway, and that would protect pedestrians, because we know it was a problem. That's why we put the curbs in where we could earlier. So that would be some gain from it. And as I mentioned earlier, the vehicle crossovers do comply with guidance, and that's clearly worded in the condition.
Okay. Alan, can I ask a question, please? As you can see on the photo there, that on the opposite side of the road, there's obviously a drop curb. That's not for someone's driveway, that's for pedestrian use. So, obviously for disabled, for people with wheelchairs to get across the road, etc., etc. So, if we're infilling that side, then how are the accessibility allowed to go across?
We would still maintain a drop curb and tactile paving for disabled people, and we can make sure somehow that it's provided on the other side of the road, which is missing at the moment.
Okay, fine, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Morse, you wanted to...
If you look at this photograph footpath people can only travel down the left side, which is adjacent to this development. If there was disabled people approaching down on that corner, is this situation safe? Because they can't go on the other side, because it's the bridge. If you look at the bridge, there's no footpath, and that is another point of concern. Is that the footpath is actually most adjacent to this site and at this corner where people are going to be reversing out.
I mean, the point is here is anything ever safe? You know, to be honest, the point that we have to acknowledge is that if we have a raised curb like it is there, it is very hard to see, but it is quite much higher than the rest of the curbs. And then if you take that right around and have a small gap in the middle for accessibility, then that would probably do the job, because I mean a bus route doesn't go around that corner, does it? If I remember correctly. No, there's no bus. Yeah, so we can't be worrying about buses. So it'd only be cars and transits or whatever. I don't think a lorry would ever tries to go up there anyway. But that's beside the point. Yeah, obviously I can't take comments from the floor, I'm afraid. Right, so. Well, I think we sort of debated this really, really well. So what I'm going to do, with the addition of the high curbs, we are moved, but we are not seconded. So I need a seconder. Councillor Wyldewoode.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a difficult one. I have sympathy for the petitioners, and we all don't like this, but it is what it is in front of us. So we have to make a decision now. I'm going to second this one, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Wyldewoode. So I have a proposer and a seconder. I will now ask for a vote on the floor. Can you please indicate whether you're in favour of this application with the high curbs as a condition? Yep. Those in favour, can you indicate? Yeah. And you abstaining? Abstain? Abstain. So we have 2 abstentions and 4 votes for. That is passed. Thank you all for your time. Sorry about the outcome, but that's the way it is, I'm afraid. If you'd like to move quietly, and if you go outside the door, can you close the door behind you? Right, so that was a good one. We really got into that one.
We are supposed to do it.
Yeah, no. I fully think it was there. It was there. And thank you for the legal advice. That was very most helpful. Okay, so we go to item 7. Yes. Okay. I'll excuse you. No, he knows he won't vote for it. That's fine. Okay, we go to item 7, which is Wyldewoode 25, the Avenue. Sorry, who's taking me? Fiona, it's your foot. Sorry, and I was going to forget you. How rude of me. After you first, please do the presentation.
Thank you very much, Chairman. So this application at 25 the Avenue is for the erection of 4 two-storey semi-detached properties, and officers are recommending approval as per the report. Firstly, I'd like to draw members' attention to the addendum report, because we did receive a further petitioner statement, and we also received some clarification from our highways colleagues on their comments in the report. So just turning to the application site, it is a large detached property on the southern side of the avenue. You can see just on that plan that number 29, which lies to the east of the site, is a replacement dwelling, and number 21 to the west of the site is a linked detached property. To the rear of the site we have Greenbelt, but the site itself doesn't fall within that designation, and a TPO covers the site. Just to the southwest we can see properties on Wyldewoode Close. The aerial image is helpful just to show you that relationship, the large property next door at number 29, and then the smaller properties, but still generous in size, at number 21 and beyond. This is a photo of the front of the property, and we see an attractive, large, traditional house. At the rear, I think this photo is particularly helpful because it shows the relationship to the neighbouring residents and the existing buildings on the plot. So we have that sort of 2-storey annex building close to the boundary with number 21, and the small garden outbuilding also along that boundary. This is just a photo of the rear of the site that shows you that greenbelt area beyond and the heavy tree screen. And then some photos of the existing street scene showing the relationship to neighbours again, the generous plots they sit within and the setback from the main road. This shows you that puts it into context and shows you the existing built form on the site and the relationship to those boundaries. And you'll note from the officer's report there was a refuse scheme that carries weight in this decision. This scheme was actually refused on 3 grounds. Firstly, on the grounds of character and appearance, and because of their larger footprint, the design, these townhouses as proposed read as sort of 3-storey properties along the road. There was also concerns regarding the impact on number 21. So I just highlight, this is number 21 here, and that projection there, because they had a first floor rear addition as well and balconies above with screens, and it was quite a deep relationship on that side. And it was also refused on the landscaping arrangement to the front and all the parking and the hard surfacing proposed there. As proposed now, we see the proposed site plan there. The application has been revised during the course of the application, and you can just see this slight blue line indicated on the drawings, which shows where it's been set back further during the course of the application. This is the 2 pairs of semis proposed, and the 4 crossovers to the front, as we describe in the report. Looking at the front elevation drawings, we can see it does take a more sort of traditional appearance and cues from that existing property. And I'll just skip to the rear elevations, where we've got them in context with the neighbours. And you can see the 2-storey rear projections in the centre, as they've got L-shaped footprints, and the single-storey element to the rear and the side boundary. If you could just note the change in level as well across the site and the proposed ridge height of these properties, because that is relevant in your consideration this evening. Turning to the side elevations, we can see that there is a large crown roof on the property, and this is the rear projection that sort of has a split level. The blue line here indicates where it's been cut back during the course of this application. And the street scene elevation as existing shows you that relationship to the neighbours and the fall-in levels I discussed, with the proposed in context and the changes in terms of the footprint, how it spans across the site compared to the refusal. Quickly, just turning to the floor plans, we've got some quality accommodation, some family accommodation as proposed now, and just touching more specifically on what I see as probably the key issue in this case, which is the relationship to number 21, the Avenue. So these 2 drawings are quite helpful in demonstrating that relationship, because you've got the 45-degree line as shown here in relation to the neighbour, because that has been amended during the course of the application to make sure the main bulk of the building isn't sitting within it. It does show the worst case scenario as identified in the addendum, because it's right in the corner of that window rather than in the central position. It also helpfully shows the level change here. We talk again in the addendum and in the report about a 2-metre difference in height, and it's more as seen from the ground floor sill height between the 2 properties, which helps that relationship and is the reason we've concluded that that relationship is acceptable. So overall, officers are recommending approval and believe that the reasons for refusal have now been overcome, and we do weigh in the balance the benefit of the 4 additional family homes. On balance, we think the impact on number 21 has been resolved, and that concludes my presentation. Thank you, Chairman.
Well done, Fiona. That's very good. Thank you very much. Mr. Peter Mann. If you'd like to come to the table for me, please. Yes, you're more than welcome. It's not a requirement anymore. So it's not a requirement anymore. It's up to your discretion whether you want to keep it like that. Yeah, no, as soon as you sit down, you press that red button, we'll start the clock, don't worry. Yes, that's it. That's good for it. Yeah. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, councillors, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for this opportunity to put forward the concerns that some of the residents of the Avenue in Northwood have in respect of the proposed development of number 25. I and my neighbours are disappointed to read in the report prepared by the Head of Planning that they have recommended the proposal be approved. However, we wish to acknowledge the hard work and efforts by Hillingdon planners and the developer have put in order to try and deal with our concerns. Notwithstanding this, I still consider that rules may not have been entirely met in relation to the situation between number 21, the Avenue, and the new development, and I agree with the planning lady that this is the main problem, the interaction between the two buildings, and the residents of those buildings are actually here today, and also of number 19. In para 7.08 of the report, under the section entitled Main Planning Issues, it states the new building is nearly 2 metres below number 21. From a detailed ground survey that had been prepared for the first proposal for this site back in 2001, it clearly shows the ground level to around number 21 is 67.76 AOD, and the levels in the grounds of number 25 near the western boundary is 66.38 AOD. That's above ordnance datum, thus showing the level difference is 1.38 metres, which is quite a lot less than 2 metres. From drawing number 5802A100, proposed site plan as amended, the proposed development still appears to cross the 45-degree line. That's the one on the drawing. Using the information including in the submission, together with the level information noted above, I think it is likely that the flat roof extension of the ground floor may be higher than the top of the fence between number 21 and 25. Hence, the new development will be more overbearing on number 21 because it will be more than half a metre higher than the plans show. Therefore, I consider that further consideration should be given to the relationship between numbers 21 the Avenue and the proposed new development, with in particular a further cutback to reduce impact. One of the points I would make is that I don't have access to the full size drawings which you people have. In the past, when we've had disputes with this particular site, we actually had the full drawings, so and I found that particular sketch, it was difficult to see what they were referring to as the levels. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll get officers to go through that after we've had all the petitions to make sure that you're clear on that thing. Thank you very much. Does anybody want any questions, to ask any questions? No, thank you, Mr. Mann.
Thank you very much. Do I press this?
Yes, please. Thank you. Miss Gandhi, would you like to come to the table, please? Your time will start with the red button. Thank you.
Chair and members of the committee, good evening. We are appointed as the new architects for this revised proposal following the previous refusal at the site for 4 townhouses, the last refusal being in November 2020. The principle of 4 new dwellings on the site is already accepted by the planning department, but upon our review we were immediately drawn to the issue arising of these previous proposal, and given our wide-ranging experience of other development in Borough, of particularly elsewhere on the avenue, we recommended the following be the basis of a new scheme. Firstly, being 2 pairs of semi-detached dwelling, not 4 townhouses, given the latter provide a far too solid and lengthy frontage across the site, whereas the former can provide for the successful breaking up of mass, build-up, scale and bulk, plus allows the building widths proposed here to compare very well with other buildings' widths up and down the road. Secondly, being reduce the building depth at the outer edges, such as the full width and solid block of the previous scheme, are again very well broken down, previous variation in scales and plan form. A stepped rear elevation provides this breakdown at the edges and fully addresses the 45 angle separation line of sight from neighbouring windows. Third being alter the design of the elevations to a more domestic architecture rather than keeping rows of central elements, tall windows and large dormers as was proposed in the refused schemes, all of which tend to increase bulk and scale of the building. Fourthly, revise the frontage landscaping layout to again provide a far more domestic environment and broken down soft/hard landscape frontage rather than the blanket full width, full depth, hard standing previously proposed. Finally, officers have already noted that the ground level of our site is being as nearly 1.5 metre lower than the neighbouring dwelling at 19 and 21 Avenue, with the difference in building height down the road, with our neighbouring being entirely evident from the street scene drawings. In their report to committee, your officers have agreed that the scheme before you positively addresses and deals with all the previous concerns raised and reasons for refusal, and we much hope members are able to accept the officer's recommendation and approve this far improved proposal before you and bring much needed new housing supply to the area of the borough. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions? No? You may go sit down. Thank you very much. Can you press the button for me to turn it off? Thank you. Okay, before I open it to the floor, I just want, Fiona, if you can just sort of, because it's been a moving feast, I think just that's to get clarity. One of the petitioner was about the distance and also the 45-degree angle, which I think is very important, that which of those blue lines is actually correct, and go from there so the committee can make a decision.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I think Mr. Mann pointed out some really key issues that we should draw attention to. So the 45-degree line is shown on this drawing to the left, and it's shown with this indicator here. Now that has been taken on this drawing from the very edge of the window. So quite often you'll see drawings before you, members, where it's taken from the centre point of the window. This is kind of the worst case scenario, and we still see the main building doesn't breach that line. Now the drawing that Mr. Mann referred,
Just because I just want to make clarity for the petitioner. When we say the main building, can you point to where the main building is, which is that corner there?
So this corner here.
Yeah. Okay.
So that falls outside of it.
Yeah.
Mr. Mann correctly identified a drawing number that did breach the 45-degree line, which prompted the revisions as part of this application. So that dotted line just there shows where it's been cut back from to make sure that that line isn't breached. So everything Mr. Mann said in respect of that was correct, but we have revised it during the course of the application to overcome that. Again, the relationship with the levels, this is really relevant as well. So again, it's correct that it's 1.4 roughly lower in ground level between the two sites. However, the actual how you feel that will be greater because of where the window sill heights are in relation to each other. So the bottom of the ground floor window sill of number 21 is in this position, this dotted blue line here, and then it goes down to here. So you would, in terms of how that is read in relation to the window, if you imagine standing in that position, it will be a lot lower. So that relationship, again, eases it. We've got a 3-metre distance between the two flank walls, and then as the property goes out again, because of the L-shaped nature of it, the distance there is at least 5.4 metres to that next bit that goes out. So this is still a sensitive relationship, and officers are aware of that, but we do think it is acceptable given the arrangement, the overall amenity of the properties, and the fact that these angles have been adhered to now with the revisions.
Okay, lovely. Just the last thing, the other blue line where it says previous scheme, that is gone, isn't it?
Yes.
So the real where the building is in that picture is actually where it's going to end.
Yes.
Okay, and so we confirm that there is no overlooking or issues from the windows at the rear of the thing. So I think I've covered everything there. I'm going to open to the floor, so who's going to take me away? Jazz and Councillor Morse, go first.
Yeah, no, thank you for that explanation. That eases my mind a great deal. Can I ask one question? I couldn't see in here anything on PD rights, future PD rights for the property. Could you point that out for me?
Yes, we do have a condition added. I'll just refer you to it. Bear with me, I will get the number. I know it's there because I've just read it before this meeting. It's number 5, condition number 5, and it says outbuildings, extensions and roof alterations. So it captures all of those things. So no garages, sheds or other outbuildings, nor any extension or other alteration to the dwelling house without express permission.
Thank you.
So, and the secret to that is express permission. So even if they want to put a shed at the back of the garden, they still have to come back to committee for a planning application. That's right. Come to the planning authority, not the committee, to get approval for that. Obviously, I don't want to see sheds. We don't want to see sheds. Right, Councillor Morse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Basically, I think this development is proportionate to the site. The cars are reversing out again, but into a road of much lower intensity, so I don't have any issues there. Basically, we're also giving a proper house accommodation, which I do appreciate. I have one question, but I would also propose we go for officer's recommendation. I'm sure you'll appreciate that, Chair. But there is one question in terms of one of the conditions. Oh, I've lost the conditions now. If you go to condition 7, 3A, the landscape maintenance schedule is for a minimum period of 5 years. Why a condition's permanent? Why is that a 5-year condition?
I can tell you this because it's something that residents' associations across the borough actually love, is that we want to make sure that when people put trees in or things, they actually stay there mature. They don't, that we've had in the past, I'm not saying this is the type of place, but we've had in the past where people put trees in because we said it's a thing and then they let them die and then we can't have any readjust. But what we do is, this is just a standard condition. It just makes sure that we get mature vegetation and it will go forward. That's the reason.
This implies that the landscape maintenance could be stopped after 5 years.
I can probably comment on that. I think it would be potentially a little bit unreasonable to go beyond that, just because you have change in owners who may want to re-landscape the garden, which wouldn't be uncommon, and then they'd have to come back and vary the condition. So 5 years hopefully would let things grow, establish. If we get particularly good trees as a result of that, we'd have the potential to TPO them. Well, this one would be covered anyway. So 5 years is a sort of reasonable period to establish.
I'm quite happy to accept that advice.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to make sure that we make sure the trees are there, the ones that eat up the horrible carbon dioxide and make that. I think it's conditioned, but I don't know whether we've conditioned it enough to say those sort of that vegetation.
We haven't gone into so much detail as to specify that. So when we get the details, we will consult with our tree and landscape officer, who will obviously sort of use their knowledge and expertise. If the members felt it was appropriate, we could tweak the condition if you had a specific requirement in that regard.
I'll let Councillor Tuckle do that because I can't do that. I can only advise you to do it.
Is that me then?
Yes,
Chairman, thank you. Okay, I'm happy. I'm sure other members are nodding as well to include a carbon absorbing species to be included. But the point I wanted to make is it's a very much improved scheme without a doubt. It provides 4 family homes, but I can't help but think there's a wonderful property that's been demolished as well. Because it is, when you look at it, it is a wonderful dwelling that we're going to lose, and there's probably a lot of memories attached to that house, but sentiment goes out the window when we're getting 4 family homes, which we actually need. So I'm glad that we've addressed the 45-degree angle, and thank you for that explanation. That was really helpful. And I'm happy to second officer's recommendation.
Hi. I'm just looking at the development operation heading. Is demolition meant to be in there?
I would consider that it wouldn't need to be, just purely because it wouldn't need planning permission to demolish because there's no designation as conservation area. So I wouldn't be concerned about. I think it's clear from the development description that it would go as a result.
Okay, lovely, thank you. I do like that. Please continue to do that because we need to make sure residents know things. Well done to the applicant, I must say. One sec, Jazz, I'll just finish my sentence. Well done to the applicant because I do like it when they come and try to work with the authority rather than thinking that they can bully us over and we're going to fall over and say, yes, please. We don't do that here in Hillingdon. Might do it somewhere else, but we don't do it here. Jazz, you wanted to come back.
Yeah, just to pick up on that point that you made about the advice you gave us on the trees. Possibly we should have that as a condition on all applications going forward. It would be sensible.
Usually do it on majors. We don't usually do it on. I think we could look at that on when we're talking about knocking down and developing new. If it's just an extension, I think we're going to be stretching it a bit to try and do that. But no, that's the reason I recommended it. I think it's a good thing to do. We're trying to be more greener, and that's a good thing. I think this is a real way of being green. I'm not going to go into electric vehicles. That's a subject for another day. But anyway, so I have got proposed and seconded. Can I have a show of hands with the added condition of beefing up that vegetation? Thank you very much. That's unanimously approved. Thank you very much for your time. And if you'd like to leave quietly, that'd be much appreciated. Okay, so we go to item number 8, which is 22 Fringewood Close. Fiona, again?
Yes, thank you again, Chairman. So 22 Fringewood Close, this application is for a new single-storey annex for residential use, which will be linked to the main property by a glazed addition, which I'll show you on the drawings. Officers are recommending refusal for the application, and there are 4 reasons set within the recommendation, section 6 of the report. So just turning to the slides, the site is within the curtilage of number 22 Fringewood Close, and it relates to the southwest corner of the residential garden. The existing site is rear amenity space for that existing property. The site is covered by a TPO, and there is greenbelt to the south, but again, it doesn't fall as part of the designation itself. Aerial images taken from the applicant's design and access statement just show there the arrangement and the pattern of development in the area. And in particular, I draw your attention to sort of the planned form and layout of Fringewood Close itself, and also other properties along Ducks Hill Road, just here. So turning to the proposed site plan, we can see the single-storey annex as proposed here. And the glazed link you can just see joining the 2 properties in that position. But as explained in the report in some detail, for all intents and purposes, officers are considering this to be a new residential unit within the site. So we've got the existing elevations here of number 22 itself. And here you can see the proposed ground floor. It's for a large 1-bedroom dwelling with living and dining and other accommodation with an overall footprint of 130 square metres inside. So this is actually larger than the application property itself, number 22, which is 108 square metres without its garage. You can see here the roof form. This rises to a height of 6 metres overall. So you can see on the elevations there the relationship to number 22 on the bottom slide. And you can see just the finished floor levels helpfully show the overall height of number 22 at 8.25 and the overall height of the new dwelling to its ridge, or to its flat ridge, at 6 metres. These are 2 other elevations for you to give you the full context of the proposed annex/dwelling, and then some sections there to show its relationship to that main house. In terms of the relationship to neighbours, it has been designed with the 45-degree lines in mind, so as you look from the rear windows of number 22 itself and also the neighbour. But in relation to the garden, officers are still very uncomfortable about that relationship, the degree of overshadowing, how overbearing that would be felt given the close distances. This is some street view images of Fringewood Close itself. They're the 2 properties, number 22 there and the neighbour number 20, and it's within that gap that the application dwelling or annex would be sited. And this is just a close-up of that gap. It would be angled so that it would be difficult to appreciate from this view, but as you can see from the rear, it wouldn't be completely concealed. That's the existing garden in the top left, showing number 22. Again, this is the large rear garden of the site, and so it will be in this location. So this rear boundary line here, I know there's been reference in the design and access statement that it wouldn't be visible from Ducks Hill Road, but officers would disagree with that, and we think in reality, especially in winter months with gaps in that vegetation, it would be visible from that street. So overall, we do have serious concerns with the proposed development, which is why we have recommended refusal on 4 grounds. The personal circumstances of the applicant are noted and do carry weight in that decision, but aren't sufficient in officers' assessment to overcome the reasons for refusal and warrant the departure from the development plan we've identified. And that concludes my presentation, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. Very good. Thank you very much. We have, I'm not even going to try and pronounce your first name, but Mr. Peterson, would you like to come to the table for me, please?
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Shout when you want me to move it on.
Dear councillors, I'm speaking to you on behalf of Mr. Mirali of number 20, whose property is adjacent to the proposed annex. Unfortunately, his father recently passed away, so he cannot be here today. I'm speaking today on behalf of the 27 people who have signed the petition in support of this application. We all know Mrs. Patel, who has lived at 22 Fringewood Close for over 30 years. We have seen how her health has deteriorated in the past few years and how her mobility has reduced substantially. Mrs. Patel, who is 90 years old now, has a very limited ability to use fully the living accommodation in her house because of the stairs. In addition, she currently cannot access her own garden, which is at a higher level and only accessible by a series of steps. Mrs. Patel's children are simply trying to build an annex where their mom can live with all her accommodation on one level and is accessible for a wheelchair user, so she can move freely around. As you may have seen from the petition, most of the signatures are from residents of Fringewood Close. The property at number 20, which is next to the proposed annex, has sent a letter of support to the council where I quote, "We have no concerns regarding impacts to our property. We all disagree with the case officer's view that the annex is out of place in the close for the following reasons." And we have already slide number 1, separation between the buildings. The left-hand side of the slide shows that if you were to walk around the close, you could see how the gap between number 22 and number 20 is much bigger because of the corner position. The right-hand side of the slide shows that once the annex is built, the distance to number 20 will not be smaller than the distance between number 20 and number 18, or between the other houses in the close. The distances between houses in Fringewood Close range from 2.5 meters to 1 meter in most instances, whilst the gap between the annex and number 20 would be of 3.5 meters. Also, the annex would be considerably lower than the surrounding houses, and the annex does not breach the 45 degrees angle principle in relation to number 20. Could we have slide number 2, please? Thank you. The left-hand side of the slide illustrates the view from Fringewood Close and how the annex is partially screened by the trees. The right-hand side of the slide illustrates the view from Ducks Hill Road. Both number 20 and 22 are fully screened by the tall hedges. Since the annex is lower than these houses, we can conclude that the annex will not be visible from this road. The case officer also refers that there are no developments of similar nature or scale in the area. We disagree with this point as well. Slide number 3. Yes, thank you. There are in Fringewood Close precedents of 2-story side extensions reducing the separation between houses. The extensions are closer to the adjacent house than what the annex would be. Also note, the extensions are taller than the proposed annex. This is in the case of number 10, number 2, and number 17. The bottom right-hand side of the slide illustrates the scale of 2-story side extensions added to number 17. Number 4, please. Thank you. Recently, a house was torn down on the corner of Fringewood Close with Ducks Hill Road to build a 3-story block of flats, which is more than double the size of the original house. The left-hand side of the slide shows the location of number 22 and the house that has been demolished. A planning permission was granted to demolish this 2-story house and instead build a 3-story block of 12 flats. And the last slide, number 5. This slide shows the street scene from Fringewood Close and Ducks Hill Road and the scale of development that was permitted on that occasion. In summary, the residents at Fringewood Close that have signed the petition agree that the proposed annex in its proposed position and with the proposed scale and layout is completely acceptable, and we are not concerned at all about any potential impact on Fringewood Close. We kindly ask the councils to consider Mrs. Patel's personal circumstances and approve this application. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Anybody any questions? No? You may sit down. Thank you very much. So is it Mr.
So it's Mr. Patel.
Mr. Patel's talking up.
Yep.
Mr. Patel, would you like to come to the table?
Dear councillors and the chairman, I am here today as a representative of Patel family. My mom is 90 years old and has limited mobility and ongoing pain due to her worsening spinal condition. She is under care of spinal surgeons at Charing Cross Hospital. She is unable to stand or walk long periods. Her GP has confirmed that she will require a wheelchair in the future. She has had several falls, one of which was severe, and she did surgery in 2020. She is currently cared for by myself and my family. We all have been living in Fringewood Close for over 30 years. The house is on 2 floors, so my mom has to negotiate the stairs every day, and this is exactly why the falls have happened in the past. Furthermore, my mom does not have and cannot use the garden anymore because the garden is a meter higher than the level of the house, as you can see in here. Struggling to climb up and down the flights of stairs within our house and in the garden had a larger impact on my mom as she has got older and her medical condition has worsened, impacting both her physical and mental health. Therefore, a letter from the GP, Dr. Balachandran, has been submitted as a part of the application outlining these issues and supporting the need for a solution to help ease some of my mom's mobility issue. I hope you had a chance to read the doctor's letter. Our application, which we are presenting here today, seeks to build an annex for my mom to live in, giving her a livable space and garden access on one level, allowing her to live out the dignified final years of her life. The case officer is concerned that annex will become self-sufficient residential unit because it does not functionally rely on the host dwelling. This is not our intention at all. We are proposing for all uses required by my mom for her day-to-day living to be accommodated within the annex. She simply cannot rely on any rooms or uses being in the main house due to the change of level. Our existing house is sunken and the garden is at a higher level. The planned annex and the garden are going to be on one level so that mom can have a seamless access to the garden and enjoy outdoor amenities. Therefore, the annex will be at a higher level than the house. This makes attaching the annex to the house not possible. There is going to be a functional link between the annex and the main house to allow us, her carers, to be on call and look after her. The link will incorporate series of steps, limiting my mum's access to the main house, hence why all the uses must be in the annex. We do not want the annex to be an independent dwelling. We have proposed as a part of the application for a planning condition to tie the annex to the main dwelling for it to be only occupied by the person who owns, resides or is associated with the host dwelling. If the members of the committee consider this not to be enough, we are willing to enter a legal obligation. We also understand the concerns by the case officer regarding the size of the annex. It has been designed to provide all the required living accommodation for reasons already mentioned, and for it to be fully accessible for a wheelchair use. The size will not have an impact on the private amenities. Our garden is currently 570 square meters, and the remaining garden will be 390 square meters. This is substantially larger than the average garden size in our close, which range from 110 to 250 square meters. We have talked to our neighbour at number 20. Their property is next to the proposed annex, and we have known them for many years. They are fully aware and supportive of our proposal. They have submitted a letter to support this to the council and expressly said we have no concern regarding impact to our property. We are aware that the local group have objected to this application. They are concerned about the annex becoming an independent unit. We understand their concerns, but we believe that my mum's health need, which they may not be aware of, together with a planning condition or a legal obligation to tie the annex to the house, should satisfy this local group, and the proposal are accepted. We have had enormous support from the local community, from the people that know us. They have known my mum's situation and they care. We have had 3 explicit letters of support and a petition signed by 27 people. We understand that in normal circumstances, this development would not be acceptable in planning terms, but these are special personal circumstances. We are hoping that her special personal circumstances, together with our support for a planning condition or a legal obligation to tie the annex to the main house, will satisfy the members of committee that this annex is necessary and acceptable. We have support from the local community. All we are asking from all of you is to support the application, to give my mum a chance to live out a dignified final years of her life in her own home. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Sell. Okay, does anybody have any questions? Sorry, Mr. Patel, just want to... Yes, Councillor Chen.
Thank you, Mr. Patel. In your email, there was a letter saying that you would possibly move into that annex at such a time. Is that something you're intending to do?
No, because of the concerns that the officer have raised, that this will become a separate unit, or somebody will tell you. What I was talking long-term use would be me and my wife could move in and our children would live in the house. So it is going to be a family home. This is where my parents had their grandchildren brought up, and this is going to be where we'll be staying. And both the houses are going to be retained.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tutt. Anybody else? No? Thank you very much for your
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Before we go any further, I've had Councillor Melvin is in support of this application. She asked me to put her, she didn't write anything, but I just wanted to make committee aware of that and her capacity as a councillor. Right, who's going to... Jazz, do you want to...
This is a really tough one. As a committee, I'm going to take it from a planning point of view, try and take any emotions aside for now. As a planning committee, we have in the past supported developments like this in back gardens, but not to the size and scale of this one. And it's something that as a committee we've always done and supported and been willing to do and help the residents along the way. But when it comes to this, unfortunately, it's huge, and it is like almost like another one-bedroom house to the side. So I'm not going to say anything more than that at this present time, but let's see what everyone else thinks. Yeah, well, as a committee, we'd love to help, obviously.
Of course, there's, we're not monsters. We have feelings as well. Councillor Tuckwell.
Thank you. I very much understand and appreciate the predicament that the applicant and their family find themselves in. The question I want to ask officers, we got 4 very strong refusal reasons here. Was there any pre-application discussions to sort of help along so that...
There's no pre-application advice relating to an annex building. So there's been other pre-application advice on the site, but nothing for a self-contained annex.
If I can come back, Chairman, is because building on what's just been said, we'd love to help. I'm desperately trying to find something in here which would enable the door to be open so that we could move forward with this. But given the strength of the 4 refusal reasons and the fact is, from a planning perspective, this is just far too excessive for the plot concerned. Again, like Councillor Dillon, I'll be happy to hear what other members have got to say, but that's my point. Thank you.
Councillor Morse?
I'm of the same opinion as Councillor Dillon. I think we should support these potential of these annexes, but the sheer scale of this annex is the problem, in my opinion. Regretfully, Chair, that is, I'm actually going to have to agree with officers. However, if it was a smaller scale annex, I think we could look at this issue. Do you want me to propose it?
I heard it. Did you? No, I'm not saying you want to.
I'll propose officers.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I thought I heard you say that. I was just sorry.
No.
Beg your pardon. I should have turned my microphone on. That would be better. Councillor Dillon, you wanted to come out?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say it, but I'll second the proposal for refusal. Gives me no pleasure in seconding it, but I would urge the applicant and our officers to engage ASAP so that we can come up with a solution for the resident.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I proposed and seconded. I would reiterate that as well. We are willing to help, but unfortunately, the height of the building and the size of it, you really are tying our hands. We cannot. It's a bigger plot than the existing house, that's what's more frightening, I think, than anything. You're more than willing to come and see our officer team, and they will guide you in the best way possible. But on that note, I'm going to have to go to the floor for a vote. So I'm proposing seconder. Can I have a show of hands, please, those in favour of the officer's recommendation? Thank you very much. That is passed unanimously. Thank you very much for your time. He's refused, yeah. Go to Miss refused. Right. We now come off our main petition agenda to the last item of the evening. This is Katie.
Thank you, Chairman. The final planning item on the agenda is development at Woodlands 5, the cottages, the drive in Ickenham. And the development is for a replacement dwelling following the demolition of the existing dwelling and an outbuilding on site. So I'll just show you the site. So this is the location plan here. This is an aerial. The site itself isn't red outlined, but you can see this is the building here. It's got a swimming pool, and this is the access here. So this is the site. It's just some photos. This is the rear elevation. It's the swimming pool there. Side elevation, just some more. It's quite a large site. There it is again. Existing site plan, existing floor plans and elevations, existing plan of the outbuilding, and this is the proposed plan. So you can see the house which was here has been demolished, and the outbuilding was down here, so it's been demolished there, and this is the new dwelling that's being proposed. This is just some pictures of the proposed front and rear elevations and side. And I'll just quickly go through the floor plans. There's a basement there, ground floor plan, first floor plan. Okay, so I'll just go back to the elevations. Okay, so the site's been referred to Planning Committee because it's in Greenbelt. So ordinarily within Greenbelt, most development is considered inappropriate. However, there are some exceptions in the NPPF, and one of them is that replacement buildings are an exception, provided that the new building is the same use and not materially larger than the one it replaces. So within the committee report, the officer has assessed this, and what they're demolishing is the existing building and the large outbuilding on site, and these would largely be commensurate in footprint, floor area and volume. So in other words, we're replacing what's been demolished, we're replacing it with this new dwelling. So the proposed dwelling is not considered an appropriate development and would not adversely affect the openness of the greenbelt. There are a few other site designations as well, so it's also within the Colne Valley Archaeological Priority Area. So we've consulted the Greater London Archaeological Advisory Service, and given the small scale of the development, they don't raise any concern. It's unlikely to dig up anything it's unlikely to have a significant impact on archaeological interests. Other matters are there were bat roosts discovered in the existing house. So when the building is being demolished, these would be destroyed. We have consulted Natural England. And they don't raise any specific concern with this, subject to the developer requiring a European Protected Species Mitigation Licence, and that's because it's a criminal offence to kill a bat. So we have conditioned that for them to obtain that before any demolition on site. There's also some mitigation measures proposed within the application where they'll be providing replacement permanent roofs on site, so some bat boxes, and I think actually within this dwelling itself, probably under the eaves. The site's also adjacent to the Colne Valley Regional Park, which is a nature conservation site. So to enhance the biodiversity of the site, we've also attached a condition requiring the submission of an ecological enhancement scheme. And the site is also subject to a tree preservation order. So 5 trees would be removed to facilitate the building. So as we can see where it was being proposed in the middle, there's 5 trees where the building footprint will be. Only one of these is a B grade yew tree and the remainder are C grade, which are of a lower quality and life expectancy. So the tree officer doesn't raise any objections, subject to the 5 trees being removed being replaced as part of a comprehensive landscape scheme, which we've also conditioned. In terms of impacts on neighbours, given the separation distances that you can kind of get an appreciation of looking at the site plan, there wouldn't be any impact on neighbouring amenity. So overall, the proposed dwelling would provide probably excellent quality accommodation, would not adversely affect neighbours, and also wouldn't adversely affect the site designation subject to conditions. So officers therefore recommend that the application be approved. Thank you.
Okay, do we have a floor plan of this?
Oh, yeah. So, basement?
Yep.
I don't think that doesn't have any games room and utility room. Yeah. So all the main living accommodations on the ground floor. So that's the standard family room, kitchen, drawing room, study, 3 bedrooms, and then a master bedroom in the roof.
Lovely. Thank you very much. And I'm glad to see that we're doing about the bats. And because it's a new build and you're knocking it down, you can ask for those trees to be ones that eat up the carbon because it's quite close to the A40. Yep, I'll put that in there. Carbon eaters, that's what I'll call them from now on. I'll open it to the floor. Councillor Brightman.
Thank you, Chairman. As this is sort of replacing an existing property for the same sort of use, I don't see any major objection to it, so I'm happy to propose.
Lovely, thank you. Anybody else want to speak? Councillor Wyldewoode.
Yeah, Chairman, happy to second.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Tugwell, do you need to add something?
You've nicked my point about the trees. I was going to dive in there with that one. I can't see a sustainability and energy condition. Do we need to have one on this application? Yeah. Again, building on your point, Chair, about its proximity to the M40, A40. Yeah.
Just a little bit further.
Yeah.
No, if it goes into the motorway to Hillingdon junction 1, which is across the bus, it's going to turn off this the edge.
Councillor Tuckwell, we can add that. You're correct. It seems to be inadvertently left off on the condition.
That's why we're here.
Well, that'll be with the charging point for electric vehicles. I suppose we have to put that in, don't we? Although I hope we go to hydrogen soon.
It should already be in the landscape condition, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it is in there.
2D.
Yeah, lovely. Okay. So I'm proposed and seconded with the added of these carbonated trees. I have to find the right what is the right term for these trees? Carbonated, are they? Okay, fine.
Trees and the sustainability.
And the sustainability that Councillor Tuckwell. So can I have the
reasoning should be added.
Oh, the reason we are adding.
When we add conditions, we put our reasoning down.
Okay, fine. Sorry, Kerry. Slap on the wrist there. Take that. The reason that we're putting the reason to have these carbon trees is because it's a proximity to the A40, and also the sustainability is something that that has been overlooked by officers. Am I allowed to say that, or is it, or do I have to give another reason?
I think we can incorporate a reasoning in terms of, addressing climate change.
Okay, thank you very much. On that note, I'm proposing second with those 2 changes. Can I have a show of hands, those in agreement? They all agree for the officer of approval. Thank you very much. Thank you all very much for this evening. hope you have a safe trip home, and we'll see you on our special meeting, which is on the 3rd of March. Okay, thank you very much. Okay.